Grand Rising, everybody. How you doing? This is your coach Renz, and welcome to the live. We're gonna talk about something for a minute, but hold on, let me turn this fan on. Going live. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to get your Lion Ass Liar shirts. I'm gonna post those. Welcome to the show. Let's see. Let's do a little housekeeping before we get started. I gotta get my life together. I ain't got everything plugged in. All right. There we go. That's better. That is better. That's better. Get everything set up here. Starting a few minutes late, but we're all good. Hello, Debbie. How you doing? Welcome to the show. I know Facebook is working fine now. Just got our first comment from Facebook. We're going to be going over this whole Joe Rogan, Billy Carson extravaganza of an event that's going on right now. They got their new golden boy. So we're going to see if their golden boy is truly golden or is he just another run-of-the-mill apologist who just happened to catch lightning in a bottle. I hope everybody's ready for tonight. I hope everybody's warm. Everybody's warm and good to go. Hope everybody's not having any issues in California or anything of that nature. But we are going to get this thing done tonight. I'm going to try some new things today. I'm doing good, Debbie. It's a little colder than I wanted to be in San Antonio, but it's all right. We're going to warm it up. Grand Rising Brian, how you doing? I see Facebook is on tonight. Just giving people a little bit of time to get on before we talk about this whole Joe Rogan experience with Wes Huff and really go down the rabbit hole of some of the things that pretty much, what's his name? Wes did the exact same thing that he was able to run over Billy Carson with. So we got about 2 minutes before we get started. Oh, yeah. Effing cold up there in PNW. I guess that means Portland Northwest. Something like that. I have no idea. But I hope you got a good fire going. Some good heat, circulation. Let's see. Boss lady, greetings. No, I'm not from San Antonio, boss lady. I just moved to San Antonio. Yes, here in Bexar County. I don't know why they call it Bear County. Well, I did do the research for why they call it Bear County. Just people don't want to pronounce things correctly, but it's Bexar County. Oh, Pacific Northwest, gotcha. Grand Rising Michael, yep, haven't seen you in a while. Akron, Ohio in the house. Cold up there too. Locked in, all right, Ray's locked in. I'm 11 minutes late, Tim. And actually, I'm not even a full 11 minutes late since I've been on for 4.5 minutes now. Amsterdam, great place to be, Ray. Stay out of that red light district. Yes, he did. He IMAX 3D got it right. He took off that academic cap and went straight on into apologetics. Grand Rising Hill. Oh, Las Vegas. I couldn't convince the wife to move to Las Vegas. I was actually, that's one of the places I didn't mind. But y'all get too cold up there too. So, appreciate that, Jeffrey. Up to work. Bizarro County. Brazos County. Tatooine in the house. Shoo, boy, you come from a long way away. So let's get started. I'm going to try a couple of things tonight. We're going to see if it works. I posted a video earlier to see if I post anything from the Joe Rogan Experience, if it will do like it normally does, which normally it demonetizes the channel and it gets kicked to the curb. But it didn't do it when I loaded the video earlier today. So I'm thinking that on this live, we shouldn't have any problems in that category of things as far as YouTube is concerned. So a new hero emerges every year. But we're going to see what we can do. It's hot. I don't mind 120 degrees. I'm good. I know how to stay inside and come out at night. Bryant College Station, still in Texas. Okay, all right. That's not too far. It's up the street. Isn't College Station, that's in between Houston and Dallas, I believe. All right, so we're going to try a few things. So let me go ahead and try this thing that I want to try to do as an intro into the situation here. If it works, that'd be great. Why is that? I don't want to play yet. He just started playing. All right, so let's see what we got here. Let's see what we're working with. $120 degrees Celsius. I think the earth would blow up. Okay, video file. Oh, well, look. Oh, hell, I don't want to go there. You need reading glasses for that. Got to be more careful. All right, we're trying to. I've never done this way before. Never tried to do a video while I'm on here. We're gonna see if we can make it work. Have a little patience with me, because I had it, but now it's gone. See, where is that? In the pictures. Okay. Gotcha. On the pictures.
Bible. Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
Let's start that over. All right. So, I think I figured out something. Woohoo! I done figured out something. Freezing in Minneapolis. I know you are. San Francisco. All right. All right. So most of us by now, if you've been paying attention since late December, there was I don't know what to call it. There was the half-ass debate that was done between Wes Huff and Billy Carson. And as most of you have seen this video, you know that there were plenty of things where Wes did a very excellent job, I will say, in that interview, as far as critiquing what Billy Carson talks about, breaking down some of the, I can't call it a misstep, because he said he utilized the same information over and over again and never course correct on it, which is one of the reasons why I've always said that I'm like 50-50 on Billy Carson in itself. But some of the things that he did say, Wes Huff was able to, make the academic corrections, and Billy didn't have nothing to say about it. Now, Billy could have course corrected, but he never did. He just came out and whined about it. There's nothing wrong with recognizing when you've made a mistake and then correcting that mistake, which seems to not be something that he wanted to do. Maybe he felt like it would discredit him completely if he came back and course corrected. I actually applaud people who are able to course correct no matter what their subject matter is. I've done so many times on multiple videos, especially if you go back and watch one of my videos from 8-9 years ago. You will hear me say things that I say the polar opposite to. I may say the polar opposite to that now. So I don't think there's anything wrong with finding out new information, realizing that you said things previously in the past that were not correct, and then making it change, a change, which is something that Carson didn't want to do for some odd reason. And he just, went ahead and continued and started griping and went to legal battles, and he's trying to legal battle internationally. And I can tell you that shit don't work out ever. So yes, it was bad. I'm going to play the first clip. Now y'all got to be patient with me with these clips, and they won't be this is the only clip that's in the right order that I want everything in, but some of the other ones will probably not be. And some of them are long, and some of them I will play and stop and play and stop, and then we will break some of these things down. But the main thing that I wanted to demonstrate is the hypocrisy of Wes Huff, because the first 2 hours of his interview with Joe Rogan were pretty on point academically, but that last hour he went totally off the rails and just completely became an apologist. So let's play this first clip so that we can have a grounds for understanding how Wes Huff messed it.
According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically? Refer to the Sinai Bible. Would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus? Like the codex that comes? Okay, that's why I was trying to get some clarification, because I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy of Codex Sinaiticus.
Wait, I got to say that was a boss ass move when he kept referring to the Codex Sinaiticus, and he just reached back and like, bam, I got one for you. So I'm gonna give him some credit. That was a boss move on that one.
That I work with in my office. So I have it here. And the only reason I asked for clarification is because Sinaiticus in particular is just a 4th century Greek manuscript. Its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. When you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified, and that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or John 19, or any of the other ones. So my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently.
Where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
The Gospel of Barnabas paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. We don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century. So I'm a historian. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. We have single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. I have a facsimile behind me of P66. This is a late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John, and it has the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. No one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than.
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that.
All right, so that was pretty excruciating on Billy's part there. He got his hat handed to him. He claims that he was sick, had just almost died, and all this sort of thing. and he was completely unprepared. Now, there was something that was said on the Joe Rogan show that I did not get a clip for, where they both were in agreement that if you are claiming to be an expert on something, then it wouldn't matter if I woke you up at 2, 3 in the morning, asked you the question about it. Excuse me. There is no brain fog about it. There are certain, I don't claim to be an expert on almost anything, but I am very well read, very well traveled, and what's the other word? The thought process I had there. Oh, but what I will say that I am somewhat of an expert on, which is critical thinking and being able to take facts, gain an understanding of those facts, put them out into practice to verify whether or not those facts are that understanding that I have rather is correct. Now, things that when it comes to belief, you can believe whatever you want to believe. You cannot, you can't force those into being facts. But what Billy did right there was to demonstrate that he had been saying the Codex, the Sinai Bible, and you can find hundreds of videos of his where he say Sinai Bible says this, Sinai Bible, Sinai Bible, Sinai Bible, which is the Codex Sinaiticus, which was written, I believe, in around the 4th century CE. And once Wes Huff showed him that he was completely wrong about the Codex Sinaiticus, saying that the crucifixion that Jesus didn't die on the crucifixion, Billy tried to course correct by bringing up the Gospel of Barabbas, which, if Billy's claim to be an expert in ancient documents and so on and so forth was to be validated, then he completely did not understand that the Gospel of Barabbas is definitely something that was written much, much, much later in the 16th century. And so he should never have utilized that you never should have utilized that in order to state these are some type of facts, right? So that's where he messed up gravely, and that's where Wes Huff began the demolishing of the entire interview, and Billy really couldn't say much, and it demonstrated that Billy Carson is one of those people who, I heard somebody say it, I'm going to repeat it with some level of authority, and when I repeat it with this level of authority, people are just going to believe it. And many people will find themselves in that situation because, let's be honest, most people are not going to go read PhD papers. Most people are not going to read archaeological papers or magazines, and they're not going to go and read peer reviews of documentation, and they're just going to run with what they've been told. Much like how you get Christians in the church, Muslims in the mosques, Jews in the temples, Buddhists in the ashrams and temples, just repeating whatever they've been told by who's ever standing up there in charge. And they don't necessarily question that information or go and seek out deeper understanding of that information. So when you're going to put yourself out in the forefront, you have to really double down on your research, because if you get exposed in that framework, it's very difficult to come back from it. It takes a huge amount of humility to just say, shit, I was wrong. I was thinking that this was legit, but as it turns out, it's not legit. So therefore, let me back up and go back and let me make correction videos. Let me talk about the fact of how I made these mistakes and how I have been using this and saying that this is factual and this is truth. But he didn't do any of those things. And so this thrust Wes Huff into the stratosphere. I believe he said that his subscribership on his YouTube channel went from somewhere in the 5 to 20,000 range, and just overnight jumped into the 200,000 range. And now he's the golden boy, the darling of Christian apologetics, and they are loving him. and it brought him to the Joe Rogan Experience. And mainly Joe Rogan being a fan and friend of Billy Carson, once that happened, it was good business for Joe Rogan to bring him on there. But it validated Wes Huff. And there are like literally that next morning after he was on the Joe Rogan Experience, I had already been getting inundated by 50, 60 videos from the debate between him and Billy Carson. And then all of a sudden I'm getting all this Joe Rogan stuff, and Christians are just like, yay, yay, yay. But Wes Huff then went on the Joe Rogan Experience and made the same excruciating mistakes that he showed Billy Carson making. And so tonight I wanted to go over some of those statements that he was making that shows that he pretty much did the exact same thing. Now, if you've seen the video I produced today already, you already know some of those things. If you saw the video I produced a couple of days ago, some of those things were already there. And you're going to, so some of it might be a little repetitive, but you'll be all right. Now, let me see if I can do this again with the video files. All right, so that was that one. And these didn't download onto my computer in the order that I wanted them. So we're just gonna go from wherever we are. I got enough notes to to put them where I want them to be. So obviously we're gonna start with this one where he talks about the crucifixion. It's not necessarily the one I wanted to start with. No, let's see. I don't want to start with this one. There's a different one that I want to start with that if you saw the video earlier today, then you already, and the video only went out like a couple of hours, like 30 minutes before I started this. But we're going to start with this.
Jesus resurrected.
And we're going to go through, this video is 10 minutes long, so I'm going to stop it a lot. All right.
Like there's something different that goes on there that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So what is
So right off the bat on this particular portion of the interview, he said that he was talking about how there were eyewitnesses and dead people don't usually rise up. And later on in this particular video, they both talk about how people in the ancient world, there was no secular way of thinking. Everybody believed that these types of magical things happen, and that this Jesus character had to be amazing that he got up from the dead. Even though within the Bible itself, they had, in the Jewish religion, there were already this belief of people getting up from the dead. I mean, you have the story of Lazarus where he got up from the dead, but that was supposedly through this power of Jesus that he was able to do so. But this, and we're only going to go through this latter half of this interview, but this shows where he starts to become an apologist by going ahead and confirming in his beliefs that Jesus rose from the dead and saying that there were eyewitnesses, but yet there were no eyewitnesses to this event that you can academically say is true. It all comes down to faith. Now, when he claimed that this was something that people didn't do, well, that would be a complete Billy Carson type lie, because if you saw the video I put out about 30, 40 minutes before this live stream started, then you know that I talked about some of the ancient characters who supposedly were Messiah types or deity types who had died, and then they were resurrected for one reason or another. So one of the first ones that many people already know about would be the death and resurrection of Osiris, or if you use the Kemetic name, it's Asar. So right off the bat, Asar dies through trickery from his brother Seth. Then his wife Isis, or Aset, she finds all his body parts except for his ping, and she takes and Thoth is there to help her to do all of this stuff. And then they take the ping, they take a obelisk, and they utilize the obelisk in replacement for his ping, and she hovers above it. Now, it's not about a virgin birth. She's not a virgin, but she hovers above it, and she miraculously becomes pregnant. So it is the miracle of a pregnancy without actually having sex, like the spirit of Osiris goes up in her and they birth out the child Horus. And then Osiris, he goes back and he becomes the lord of the underworld, taking Anubis's place as the lord of the underworld. And Anubis becomes the guide in the underworld. So you have a savior type who's in a deity savior type who's in the underworld for the Egyptians, to which was a Mediterranean religion right there with these so-called Israelites who were under Egyptian control for a good 3,000 years in that area of the Levant. So it's not like they would not have heard of this story before. And since they were pings on my golf club, and since they were, easily connected to these people, as prescribed by the Bible, they were connected to Egypt. Jesus supposedly went and lived in Egypt, but there's no academic proof of that ever happening. But these stories would have been known by those people. And I'm just going to run through a list, give you a little bit on some of these people, because I do want you to go and watch the video I put out like 30 minutes ago. But you had Quetzalcoatl. He supposedly died, made himself mortal, died, came back to life. Tamuzi, a Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian deity, died. His wife pleaded for him to come back to life while she was down in the underworld. Atalu said, okay, I'll let him come back, and he came back to life. Adonis died and came back to life. Atticus died, came back to life. Zagreus died, came back to life. A lot of you guys know about Dionysus. Dionysus, he died as an infant, then was placed in Zeus's thigh, and he was then born again as a born again savior type, the one who turned water into wine as well. But Dionysus was one. In the Hindu religion, you have Sanyana, who had a similar story to Dumuzi, where he was married to Saritri, and he dies. Saritri goes and pleads with the underworld boss, and the underworld boss says, okay, I'm gonna let him come back. He's gonna be your husband, and he comes back. But even in some of our modern, and then you got Odin, but this is also recorded, you know how they like to throw up Tacitus, right? Where Tacitus recorded some of the Germanic religions, and one of those Germanic religions had Wotan. Wotan later on becomes Woden, who later on becomes Odin. And Odin hung on a tree for 9 days, pierced in his side, dies, finds out the magic and power of the ruins, and then comes back to life. You also have in modern, more religions that are still alive today, the Bodhidharma supposedly died. A monk said that he saw him alive. They put him in jail, but then they went and checked the sarcophagus, saw that he only had one shoe, because the monk said that he saw the Bodhidharma walking around with one shoe on. So they believe that the Bodhidharma came back to life, right? Yeah, we said Lazarus is one of those characters that came back to life. And then even beyond that, they believe, like the Jewish people believe, that people will be, the Jewish saints, the Israelites, will be resurrected from the dead. In Islam, Muhammad he's dead now, but he's going to come back to life at the end times. So this idea of some savior type dying, or some deity dying and coming back to life, was not only a common trope around the world, but was definitely a huge common trope within the Mediterranean religions. So if we're talking about the Greeks, the Kemetic people, the Sumerians, Babylonians, the Indus people, all these people had these dying savior deities who all came back to life. So with him saying that this made Jesus special, is him giving in to the belief, and is not academic at all. So let's play some more.
Or personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Well, I think so. as a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is highly unusual.
All right. So individuals close to his circle see him not dead. The data does not support it. Absolutely zero people in his inner circle saw him dead. The only person who claimed that they saw Jesus for themselves, who was living in and around that time frame, that we have, that there are letters that are written by the person, and only 7 of them, not all the 14, is Paul. Paul claims that he saw Jesus resurrected on the road to Damascus. Now, this you can find in Dionysius' story as well, and I forgot the name of the story for Dionysius, but if you look up Dionysius / in relation to Paul, it'll come up, but it's a poem, it's kind of skit. So Paul is the only one. None of the other Bible letters are, you can historically say Matthew wrote this, Mark wrote this, John wrote this, Luke wrote this. These were all added to the gospel names in and around 180 by Irenaeus. None of them were beforehand. As a matter of fact, you would think that if those names were already ascribed to them, then when Justin Martyr wrote his histories, you would think that Justin Martyr at that time frame would not have called it the wisdom of the apostles, but would have called them by name. But they were all anonymously written. And the only reason Matthew is named Matthew is because there's the part in there where the Jesus character supposedly go and talk to Matthew. But even in that one, the way it's written, Matthew is spoken of in a third person. He's not spoken of in first person as if he was writing it. And Luke says that he wasn't an eyewitness. And we know that Mark wasn't an eyewitness either. All of them were written in third person, or Mark is written in third person as well. So none of them are written by people who was actually there. This is all stuff that was written later by other people and then claimed to be authored by those other people. And we're going to get a little deeper in Luke. I don't know where he says that information about Luke, but we're going to find it.
Usual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024, trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on for. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well,
now y'all heard that. He claimed that these things are written during the time frame of the eyewitnesses. Yet none of them were actually written during the time frame of any eyewitness. So what they say is that, like, how Mark is supposed to be the oldest gospels, where all those supposed older gospels are written after the time frame of Paul's letters, right? And so with them being written after the time frame of Paul's letter, they were written, and if there were any people who were alive during the time frame that Jesus supposedly walked, these would have still just been children, because we're looking at a time frame that is, at best 40 years later. So if you were an adult in your 20s and 30s, then you would have to be 60, 70 years old. And we know the life expectancy of people back then was not 60, 70 years old. True, somebody could have lived, and some people did live to be 60, 70 years old at that time frame, but most people died much earlier than that. So to say that it was written during the time frame of these eyewitnesses is a reach, because you're if I'm 18, I don't, you can't ask me if I was to be an eyewitness to things that happened when I was 15, 16 years old, and you're asking me now and it's 40 years later, you're going to get the wrong answer most of the time. You're not going to get something that I can say was exactly how it went down. Like, and it could be something major, like 1996, the Olympic bomber in Atlanta. Can I give you a very accurate description of that? No. I can't even tell you what the guy looked like. And I was a grown ass man when that happened. You know, there were things that happened when I was in Desert Storm. I couldn't give you an accurate description, and I was there. Right? There are many things that happened throughout this time frame that I couldn't tell you now. So how in the hell you think some people who just walking around who are in their teens will be able to give you an accurate description? And to say that those people were is just a false statement. Now, I don't know if he's going to get into the Luke part, but I wanted to break down some of the aspects of his statements that he is going to make later, but I just want to hit it right now. He talks about the fact that Luke went through this process of making sure that the information that he was getting was accurate, that he did his due diligence like a historian would. Don't mind if my wife is down there cooking and the fire alarm went off. She's all right, though, y'all. She's all right. She's all right. She'd scream if there was a problem. So when we look at Luke, now I want you guys to tell me exactly how accurate was Luke trying to make sure the information was correct when you look at what Luke 1 says. And it says, Luke 1, it says, insomuch as I have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things which have been accomplished among us, just as they were delivered to us by those from whom the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. It seems good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent, the Ophius, that you may know the truth concerning the things which we have been informed. Now, he's saying he's compiled a narrative based on things that have been accomplished among us, that we just as they were delivered to us by those in the beginning, and he's claiming that they were eyewitnesses. Wes takes that to mean that these people, that this information, that he went and sought out these eyewitnesses. But this does not indicate in no way, shape, or form that he literally went out and sought eyewitnesses. Basically, he's compiling what other people have said, right? And Luke is doing this at the earliest, around 80 CE. Most likely, he's doing this somewhere between 90 and 100 CE is when this book was being written. Now, when you look at the book of Luke, the oldest papyri that we have concerning Luke is papyri number 4 and papyri 75. Now, papyri 4, which is a second century document, so it's not even in the first century. It doesn't even match. It doesn't even match the time frame. It mainly had chapter 6, and then it had parts of like chapter 1 and like one verse of chapter 1, one verse of chapter 3, one verse of chapter 2. It had all these different verses, but what it did not have was chapter 1:1. Papyri 75, which is a 3rd century creation, only had chapter 3 verses 18 through 20, but verses, it had chapter 3, verses 14 through chapter 24, 53. So it's missing chapter 1. Now, if you think about this, Irenaeus wrote in 180 and wrote that Luke was the author of this book. Yes, I hear it. It won't. But just keep do the door thing. Keep doing it. Woman, seriously? Seriously. This is what we're doing. Close the door, please. Huh? Why, y'all? Why? My wife is silly. So anyway, just gonna interrupt me in the middle of it. But here's some problems when you look at Papyrus 75, because Papyrus 75 also has John first chapter, all the way through John 15th chapter, verse 8. And the reason why this is important is because when you look at what the Papyrus 75 have, there are certain differences that Papyrus 75 have that you have in your Codex Sinaiticus, which was written in the 4th century, as well as what's written in John. So, for instance, in Luke 16:19, they both have the same statement talking about how a rich man who clothed himself. But the Luke version tells you what that man's name is. It has his name, Nineru was his name. The fact that it takes out the name in the Sinaiticus and takes out the name, somewhere the name got taken out. And if you can take out names in certain parts, then why can't you take out other parts within the book? It lends to the idea that it is not exact. And there's a reason why I'm going to talk about the exact, because we're going to get into something else later on. And then one big story, a huge story, is that in John, on the Papyrus 75, which is, like I said, dated 3rd century, Sinaiticus is not until the 4th century. In John, it's totally and completely skips what you have in your Bible at John 7:53 through chapter 7:53 through chapter 8:11, which this is the story of the adulterous woman. See, I told you she can get that thing off. I don't know why she came up here. Good job. So I want you to think about this critically. If Papyrus 75 excludes a huge story of the woman who committed adultery that they brought to Jesus, and the whole drawing the line in the sand and let he who is without sin cast the first stone, that whole story is missing from Papyrus 75. Not that there's a gap in the papyri, it's just not there. So if that part is not there, then you have to wonder, when Irenaeus named it Luke, did it have that chapter 1 of Luke in there? Was it saying that Luke went through this whole process? Did he talk to eyewitnesses? Because evidently changes were made by the time you get to Irenaeus. Changes are certainly made by the time you get to the 4th century with the Codex Sinaiticus. So there's a lot of wiggle room to have doubt about the accuracy of these old pieces of scrap here and scrap there, because he gave Joe Rogan a piece of papyri, was it 52, I believe is what he gave him, which has the book of John in it. He also pulled down how he had papyrus 66, which is an incomplete version of the book of John. So if you have incomplete versions, you can't legitimately say that it is exactly the same as what you have in your Bible today. But also, if you can see that the papyri from these 3rd century and 2nd century have differences than what you have in your Bible today, then it's understandable that it may be a different version that they were reading in the late 1st century, early 2nd century compared to what you're reading today. So for him to make that statement that there were eyewitnesses, there were no eyewitnesses. Luke and John admittedly that they were not eyewitnesses. Mark was not an eyewitness either. Now, somebody mentioned earlier that Mark was the first one written. Mark is the oldest one that we do have. But the problem with Mark is the fact that all the other Bibles, all the other Gospels, borrow from Mark. You can not, I don't know of one scholar that disagrees that that Matthew, Luke, and John borrows from Mark, or at least had access to Mark, and they completed their story based on Mark and possibly another one, which they call the QLO. But the fact that Mark is not an eyewitness invalidates his entire thought process of this thing being done by the eyewitnesses were the ones who wrote the gospel, and that is something that's just completely not true. He does correct it later and says that Luke and John were not eyewitnesses, but he still wants to think that the others were. So let's continue a little bit.
How many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus's ministry, who...
Let me stop that right there, because you know how earlier, if you watch this interview, in the very beginning of the interview, they both agree that if you're an expert on something, that no matter what time somebody wakes you up in the morning, you should be able to, there's certain things you should just know. The fact that he doubles down and keeps saying that 400 people were eyewitnesses, he even convinced Joe Rogan that 400 people were eyewitnesses. He gives you 1 Corinthians where Paul writes that 400 people. Now, you guys we're not academic scholars. How many people does Corinthians actually say saw Jesus after the resurrection? And it's an estimated number. I'm sure it's not exact, but how many do you guys know how many people they actually claim that Paul claims saw Jesus? And mind you, Paul is saying this based on somebody telling him who that person said that he was told by somebody else. So Paul is not getting this from the witnesses. He's hearing it from somebody else who say they got it from the witnesses, right? So how many people does Paul write in Corinthians saw it? The pastor Phil, first one to say it. So if you're an expert in the Bible, how do you mix up 400 and 500? I can understand if he said over 400. But how do you mix up 400 over 500? How do you not self-correct when you're making that statement? Something, if you're an expert, something should have clicked in your mind and said, whoa, no, my bad, it was 500. The book actually says 500, not 400. But now, and if Joe Rogan, if you ever watch this, please do not believe that it was 400. It actually says 500. But there's a question that an apologist should ask themselves. Who are these 500 plus 500 people? Where is their testimony? What type of people are these 500? Were there scholars involved? Were there historians? Were there the people? I mean, how did they see him? Were they some of the aristocracy? Were they some of the rulers? Who were these 500 people that claimed that they saw Jesus? You know, who were these people? Can you give me a description of these people? They cannot, because there is zero testimonies of these 500 people seeing this resurrected Jesus, right? And if it's 500 people, I see what you're saying, spiritual rant, most likely 500 illiterate people. You got to think about the size of a town back in those days. The size of a town, 500 people in one town, that's a big township for back then. And 500 people, you're going to have some literate people. You're going to have some scribes. You're going to have some Pharisees, some Sadducees. You're going to have not just your illiterate people who see this Jesus. You're going to have people of different age groups, people of different educational levels who saw this supposed Jesus, and not one of them, not even one, wrote it down. Not even one started becoming a preacher. None of them? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Let's listen to some more.
Were there, say it's something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
Do you
Now that's a whole nother thing right there. A bunch of other messianic leaders who died and the movement died with them. Sir Dr. Gautama, he died. Buddhism is still around. Still around. I don't know who started the Indus religion, but Indus religion is still around. Muhammad died, but the religion is still around. The belief in Quechua through Odinala, they're still around, believing in Quechua. So Erie, he died, but the religion is still around. He died in the 9th century, but his religion is still around. There was another one. Where's that note? I actually wrote that down on the note. There was one more that I wanted. Lao Tzu. Supposedly, nobody can prove that Lao Tzu actually lived, but Lao Tzu, he died. Taoism is still around. Whoever started Ifa, because I can't say that the Erie from Erie and the Odinala religion became Ifa, but whoever started that religion, the religion is still around. So to qualify whether or not somebody lived, died, started a religious movement, and it being still around is a validation that your religion is accurate. He leaves a lot of room for other people to be valid, to be real. So in this instance, he should say that Buddha is real. The Indus religion is real. Islam is real. Odinala is real. Taoism is real. Ifa is real. And any other religion that is still around today is real. All of them are real, according to his statement there. So, like I said, he's making these claims that are pretty much the same as the kind of claims Billy made.
think it's possible that he didn't die? And do you think it's possible that they thought he was dead? Because that does happen. There was actually a case very recently where a guy was about to be harvested for organs. They thought he was dead, and this guy started moving again and came back to life. It's a very, very bizarre case because his family had been told that he was going to be harvested for organs. They were preparing for that. And this guy comes back.
Yeah, I mean, we know a lot about Roman crucifixion. And we know
brutal.
that, and we know that they did their job well.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if you look at, say, very skeptical biblical scholars, like non-believing, atheist, agnostic Christian scholars, they will say if we can know anything about Jesus, like they'll cast a doubt on a lot of the things that we read about in the Gospels in terms of the actual historical Jesus of Nazareth. They'll say one thing we can be sure of is that he died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. Because we have not just multiple attested documents that we refer to as the New Testament, but Roman and Greek and Jewish writers refer to that claim afterwards.
Now, when he talks about these other people outside of the Bible who refer to the claim, you got to emphasize the fact that it is a claim. It is not a true reality. That when Tacitus wrote about it, he was writing what the Christians believed. When Josephus wrote about it, he didn't actually write about it. It's an interpolation. Josephus actually did not validate Jesus. The Testimonium Flavianus is known to be an interpolation, meaning that somebody added it to his writings that were already there. So it's not real. It's not Josephus making the claim. People believing and following the other Yeshuas who were walking around as itinerant preachers at that time frame or Messiah types, yes, he validates that. But you're still looking at people who wrote 100 years later. Tacitus is writing in around 110, 120, right? So none of these people are writing at the time frame of this Jesus character. So none of them are actually validating any of it. And the Pilate letter, the Pontius Pilate letter, has been is known as a forgery. And so you can't even take the Pilate letter and say that that's a reality, because it's known to be a forgery as well. So I don't know where he's making these statements. What is he basing them on? He just names these different nations that were in existence, or people groups that were in existence at that time frame. But none of them are validating, or none of their statements are proof that this actually happened.
And talk about the fact that you have this guy, and it's mocked within earliest Christianity. So one of our earliest, in fact, not one of, the earliest depiction of Jesus on the cross is called the Alexamenos Graphido. And it's probably from the end of the 1st century. And it's it depicts an individual with their arms raised in an act of worship, worshiping a man with a donkey's head who's being crucified. Whoa. And right beside it, it says Alexamenos worships his God in Greek. Whoa. And it's mocking, right? Because crucifixion was for the lowest of the low. It was for like slaves. In fact, if you were a Roman citizen, you were banned from being crucified.
Who was it that got crucified?
Wait, now, do you know that most people who endured crucifixion didn't die? Like, crucifixion wasn't always something that was a death penalty. Sometimes people were just tied up there and they had to stay up there. And the reason why families were around with food and water and things of that nature is to provide substance for that person while they was up on the cross, but also to keep birds and things like that away from the person. So crucifixion wasn't always this death sentence. As a matter of fact, most of the time, people on the cross didn't die. It's kind of like how people have this romanticized idea about gladiators, and that gladiators died in the arena all the time. No, most gladiators didn't die in the arena, because that would have been cost prohibitive, and the sport would have been, would have died out very early. Imagine if every NFL game, everybody died, then no, that you couldn't maintain the league. So gladiator games, everybody didn't die. Then up on the cross, everybody didn't die on the cross. Now, were there some people who did? Sure. Yes, of course. But is it proof that Jesus died on the cross? No, there's not. And just because somebody mocks it doesn't necessarily make it a reality. Now, this part is where he really gets into his, where he demonstrates that he is no better than, I can't prove it right now. I'll do a video talking about crucifixion and how not everybody died on a cross later, Tori. I don't want to get off this subject right now.
Upside down.
Peter.
Why? Was it because like regular crucifixion wasn't good enough for him? Or what was he didn't deserve it because Christ had gone through it?
Well, so the story is that they say, we're going to crucify you. And he says, it's like too big of an honor to die like my Lord. And they say, well, we can fix that.
Oh, Jesus. Shut your mouth, buddy.
Listen, the Romans were pretty brutal.
Oh, yeah.
But this is why we know, like.
Okay, so you notice there that he, Joe Rogan asked the question, something that is known in many traditions of Christianity, that Peter was crucified upside down on a cross. Does anybody know where that comes from? I'm gonna give you guys a minute to see if you know where that comes from. While I look up something. Does anybody know where that part of that idea comes from? Not necessarily the Vatican, but it becomes the Vatican, yes. Where did I write those notes at? Okay, Andrew, the story of Peter's crucifixion comes from the Apocryphal Acts of Peter. Now, I want y'all to think about that for a minute. He just validated that Peter was hung upside down on a cross, and just in the same way that, what's his name, Billy Carson said that, hey, the Jesus didn't die of crucifixion. It's in the Gospel of Barabbas, which is a forgery. When you research the Acts of Peter, what you're going to find is that the Acts of Peter was not written until the late 2nd century at best, but most likely in the 3rd century. It is not considered authoritative because it was written way too late to be considered authoritative as far as the life of Peter. There are some fantastical things that happen that do not fit within the rest of the biblical canon. And there are a lot of Gnostic ideas within the Acts of Peter. When you look at this Acts of Peter, one of the things you'll see is that Peter is in Rome and he has this contest with another person who is claiming to be a teacher of Jesus. And the guy flies up in the air and Peter does some little magic and the guy falls down and breaks his neck, you know. But in the same way that people jumped on Billy, and I'm not trying to defend Billy in this one because he should have known better than to use the gospel of Barabbas. But in the same way that he jumped on Billy about utilizing the gospel of Barabbas, where is the cry? Where is the outcry for him validating to Joe Rogan and suggesting that it was a true statement of him dying on the cross upside down, when this story, this tradition comes from something that the Christian church declared as heresy that is not in your Bible? Medallia, where is it in the Bible? What chapter, what verse is Peter crucified upside down? And you can go to 1 Peter where it talks about how Peter was crucified, but where is it that he was crucified upside down? You will not find that in 1 Peter. The only place you're going to find that is in an apocryphal text called the Acts of Peter. So where is it? Oh, and for Tori earlier, if you go read the writings of Josephus, you will find instances in the writings of Josephus where people who were crucified did not die. You actually even have the story in Josephus in his writings where he talked about how there were 3 people up on the cross. He saw that I think 2 of them were his friends, and he asked Titus if he could let them down. I let all 3 of them down. Two of them died later on from medical issues, but one of them survived. But this is not about belief. This is about critical thinking. Yeah, it is. Oh, you're not disagreeing. Okay, my bad. My bad. Thank you for the correction. Don't mind being corrected. So y'all don't get on her. Y'all don't get on Madali. If I'm saying your name wrong, please forgive me. You know. But anyway, so this is this last part of this thing. He's just in a, like Keith just said, he's just in a spiritual rant. He's taken away his academic credibility, and now he's just talking the same way.
It's interesting. We know a lot about crucifixion, but crucifixion was seen as so disgusting.
I want to get past this.
Early 80s. It was done by a group of biblical scholars and then medical. Him appearing 3 days later, completely fine. I mean, if the first thing you do, if you survive crucifixion and then you go and you find your disciples, the first thing you say is not, peace be with you. It's get me to a hospital, right?
Did they have them back then?
No, not really.
Are we entirely certain of their measurement of days?
This part is important.
So this is an interesting question because of the differences between when the Gospel of John says Jesus died compared to the Synoptics, because John appears to be using the Roman convention of counting time, and the other Gospels, when they describe the timing, appear to be using the Jewish ones. And actually, if if you correlate between the two, they match up pretty well. So the thing is, with Jews, any part of a day was considered a day. So 3 days and 3 nights becomes almost an idiom for any part of that day is the day. So if Jesus, and because they count evening and morning, evening to morning is the day, it's very possible that it wasn't like how we would think of 3 24-hour days, especially if he dies on Friday and wakes up on Sunday.
So that would actually make it less time than more time.
Yeah.
So it's not like he had recovery time.
Oh, no, he didn't have recovery
That's
time.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm kind of getting. It's not like it was 3 days. It was actually 3.
Okay, so here he does it again. He is harmonizing the Gospels in order to make it fit into a predetermined thought process, instead of just accurately revealing the information how it should have been revealed. So I want you guys, I'm going to break this down. I want you guys to think about this for a minute. All right, I want you to contemplate this and think through this logically. According to Matthew in 12:40, it literally states that he will be in the grave. Jesus is saying that he's going to be crucified and he's going to rise again. And he says 3 days and 3 nights. Very clear. Not any part of the day equals a day and all this stuff, but 3 days and 3 nights. In Mark chapter 8, verse 31, it says that he rose after the third day. After the third day. Not on the third day, but after the third day. In Luke, because they were, is it Luke? In Luke, because I think they were doing it on, they were talking about the day of preparation. It was the third day. Luke said it had been 3 days since everything had happened. So the third day had already passed in Luke as well. And then in John 19:4, chapter 19, verse 4, it says that he died roughly, that he was crucified Thursday at noon, roughly around noontime. All right. And I can't even see my own writing. It said that he died around Thursday at around noontime, and then that he was resurrected on Sunday, because he says he was resurrected on the first day. So that's Thursday at noontime, and then he's resurrected on the first day of the week, which is Sunday. So, and now understand, and the Romans, the way they counted time in a 24-hour time space. So if you look at Matthew, you're looking at least 72 hours. If you look at Mark, it's a little bit more, it's around about 50, 60 hours. And Luke and John, all of them have a varying time frame of these 3 days. So they weren't trying to romanticize this. So he harmonized it to make it fit. But they all have a different time frame, because one is done on the preparation day, another one is done, right after the Passover. Matthew said specifically 3 days and 3 nights. So this idea of how they looked at it, and this is all written in Greek. So the mindset is that it's written from the Roman perspective in most of this. So he's making this claim, but is ignoring the actual information that his book utilized to discuss this whole matter. So he's doing the same shit. And
3 months.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So
no, not like that.
Then 400 people saw him afterwards.
That's the claim that Paul makes.
Paul makes it.
Now, you would think by now in this interview that he would have corrected himself and not because now Joe Rogan thinks that it's 400 people. You would think that he would have corrected himself by now when Joe Rogan says it again, but there is no correction on here, right?
Yeah.
And how many different people have some sort of a recollection or a writing or something that's attributed to them of being witness to his resurrection?
Well, you have Peter, Paul, Jude, James, and Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The thing with Matthew, Mark, and Luke is that Matthew and John are attributed to direct disciples of Jesus. Luke and Mark are not. So they are not.
So he just said that they are attributed Matthew and well, he just said that what Luke and Luke and Mark are not, but John and Matthew are attributed to eyewitnesses, people who was in his inner circle, but they're attributed to them. They're not actually written by them. The dating doesn't fit. The writings don't fit. Matthew and John are written after Mark, and Luke is written after Matthew and Mark, and they all are borrowing from Mark. So he claims that these are eyewitnesses, but in fact, he's stating here that his statement here invalidates that whole thought process.
Not eyewitnesses within the Jesus community. In fact, Luke prefaces his gospel by saying that. He's right up front about this. He's like, hey, I'm not an eyewitness. Don't confuse me with an eyewitness. But he actually uses conventional writing. What's the term I'm looking for? He uses writing conventions of the day that would fit within regular biography that was written within the Roman world. So you have a guy named Quintilian.
So that's where earlier when we was talking about, I went ahead and broke down how Luke it doesn't necessarily say that he went by some types of standard, that all he did was just collect information from other people. So, and it wasn't eyewitnesses. He was taking information of what they had been told and what people had been saying. It is not that Luke went out and specifically looked for eyewitnesses. So the fact that he was saying that indicates that he's being more of an apologist instead of being a true academic.
Who is basically, I mentioned him before with the, he's teaching people how to write. And he says that if you're going to write biography, you need to be interviewing eyewitnesses and you can't be too far away from the event to be able to write these things. And Quintilian, Lucian, and Josephus, who are all these very prominent ancient biographers and writers of history, have a lot of crossover in the way they describe how you should write history with the words that Luke uses at the beginning of his gospel, where he says, I'm interviewing eyewitnesses and I'm writing up an orderly account. And so he's saying, I'm going to use.
So once again, Luke does not say anything about him interviewing eyewitnesses. He said, insomuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things which have been accomplished among us. So he's taking narrative that other people have written. He's not interviewing eyewitnesses, just as they were delivered to us by those from whom the beginning were eyewitnesses. So Luke is claiming that I'm taking information from some other people who have put this stuff together, who claim that they got it from an eyewitness. Luke is not interviewing eyewitnesses at all. And to use people who was writing after Luke supposedly was written to say that Luke was following their techniques of how to write biographies, because Josephus is not writing until early second century. Well, he might have been writing in he was writing in late first century and early second century. There is nothing in Luke chapter 1 that suggests that. And the earliest writing of Luke chapter 1 comes along in the Codex Sinaiticus, which is in 4th century. So it's not like anybody else. You can prove that this is what Luke looked like in the 1st century at all, first or 2nd century at all. And I like what Eric said, that he's correcting information from other people. What makes him an authority on an account he didn't write? See how the misinformation is spread. Exactly. Right. And think about how much easier it was back then to write whatever you want to write and make it stick. It's more difficult today to do that, but people still are able to accomplish that in our time frame today.
These methods that are expected as good history of my day. I'm not an eyewitness, so I'm going to try to find the people who are eyewitnesses, and I'm going to try to encapsulate this within a document that communicates
Luke never said that.
what is being written.
He never said that.
So we have an account of the resurrection. Do we have an account of the denial of the resurrection? Is there an historical record of him just dying and this, like a refutal or a rebuttal rather to what they're saying?
No, the only ones from the ancient world that deny his resurrection are groups that come on afterwards that sometimes are described as Gnostics, and they're not necessarily just denying it for the reasons we might think they were. They're denying it because they have incorporated ideas of pagan philosophy where they believe that the spiritual is good and the physical is bad. So
that's funny. Okay, you're not going to have deniers of it. When Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, pretty much anything that went against the Orthodox version of Christianity was destroyed. Just like the reason why we don't know the actual teachings of the Marcion version of Christianity is because everything that Marcion had wrote was destroyed. The only things that we know about Marcion are what people who were against the Marcions, which was the Orthodox Church, is what they wrote. And there are many other variations of Christianity where the documentation was destroyed or lost simply because the Orthodox Church, with a heavy hand and a sword in that hand, killed those people. The only reason we have more of an idea of what the Gnostics believe is because we found the writings at Nag Hammadi. Beyond that, if they were able to, if they would have destroyed what the people at Nag Hammadi had written, we wouldn't even know what the Gospel of Thomas says, the secret writings of Peter and James and all those. We wouldn't even know what the Gnostics actually believe. That's at least the Coptic Gnostics of Egypt, if we didn't have that. So to say that, to say that is just to say that we don't have those is a reason why, because they killed anybody who would have. I'll put a link to where you can get the shirt for Lying Ass Liar in here.
if Jesus was crucified, so let me back up. If Jesus is God, he cannot have a physical body. So they deny that he actually had a physicality to him. This is sometimes called Docetism, because dokein in Greek means to seem. So these groups that we describe as the docetics, they are denying that Jesus had a physical body. He only seemed to have a physical body. And they wrote documents later on. So the Gospel of Peter, which comes around in 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries, is being written, and it has Jesus kind of chilling on the cross because he's not really physical, because he's divine, and physical entities don't have physical bodies. So we don't actually get like a concrete denial of his resurrection in that way until you get things like the Gospel of Barnabas in the Middle Ages, which is it's actually the document that Billy brought up to me in the conversation we had, is the evidence that Jesus was never crucified, the Gospel of Barnabas. Well, Gospel of Barnabas is 15th century. It paraphrases Dante's Inferno. It's not an ancient document. So, but in the ancient world, nobody really had that big of a problem with these kind of supernatural claims. The more of the kind of skepticism was why you would worship a crucified individual to begin with.
Wow. So they were less surprised that he was resurrected.
Or that you would worship a crucified like teacher was just seen as silly.
Because it's so humiliating to be crucified.
Yeah. Yeah. And that like a god would let himself go through this.
Right.
Like what are you talking about? In fact, the ancient world didn't really have a problem with supernatural events. There is an ancient writer who mocks Christianity, and he particularly mocks Christianity in saying that, of course, Jesus did miracles because Jesus had a childhood in Egypt. And he goes, all of those Egyptians are magicians anyways. So he just learned the magic when he was a child. So he actually confirms, incidentally, two things: that the narrative in the Gospels where it says that the Holy Family fled to Egypt during the reign of Herod, he corroborates that he actually thinks that happened, and that Jesus did miracles. He just attributes the miracles to Jesus being a traveling magician anyways. And, anybody who lived in Egypt knows some magic.
That is what's...
And you notice how he's like allowing for, and I put the link for where you can get the Lying Ass Liar shirt in the comment section. You should also be able to find it under the description. You know what? I just thought about that. It should be under the description of this video as well, where you can get the merch of Lion Ass Liar. And for those who want to support the channel in other ways, right there. So now it's interesting that right there they just talked about the fact that people in that time frame, they all believed in the supernatural, whether they were believing in their God or somebody else's God. And they're going to go on and talk about this a little bit more, about how they believe that that's how the people believed. And that there wasn't a thought process like we have today, because we are more scientifically advanced than the people in that era were. So we don't accept that just because there's a drought, that must be some type of God that did that. But he also talked about how the Gospel of Peter, but he didn't talk about how the Gospel of Peter is an apocryphal and heresy according to Christianity, but just went along through it as if it's a regular thing, like it's something that you should be able to gain information from. Is that not the same thing that he crucified Billy Carson over? So hypocrite.
Really fascinating that the mindset of the people that lived back then was that whatever was going on in Egypt was so crazy that they had to be magicians.
Yeah. Yeah, but everybody believed in supernatural events. Like, there's no such thing as like a secular work in the ancient world. Even Plutarch, who's one of the most famous biographers in the ancient world, he wrote 90 biographies, of which 60 still survive today. He was a priest of Apollo. So like, he's already assuming that the gods exist, that crazy things are going to happen in the world. And so they didn't have a problem with people doing miracles or crazy things happening. Well,
that's also why it's so interesting trying to put your mind into the context of people that lived back then when you try to interpret what these stories were all about, because they did believe in things that weren't real. So when they talk about this thing that we're supposed to believe is real, when you have all this evidence that they believe things that aren't true, it's interesting, right? Because like, you're now saying, yeah, but this one really was true.
Right.
Well, there's so many different things that they thought of and believed that weren't true.
Now that was one of the most enlightening things that I think that Joe Rogan said right there, is the fact that in today's world, we know that people don't believe in Zeus and they don't believe in Odin and all these other deities and all these other religions, and we accept them all as myth. But yet you want us to accept yours as being true, that, oh yeah, all these other people, they didn't rise from the dead, but your guy, he rose from the dead. These other people, they didn't convert water into wine, but your guy, he converted the water into wine. That is playing on the same notion of the Billy Carson type stuff, when you say, oh, it was the aliens and the Anunnaki, but we don't have any proof of that. But then you believe that, yet you'll say that, oh, Quetzalcoatl came down from the heavens and started the Aztec civilization, and then he left and he's supposed to come back through the sky again. But oh, that was false, but ours is true. Allah is false, but ours is true. It's all the same thing. If one is invalid by what they claim to be textual evidence, then all the other ones are invalid if all they're utilizing is textual evidence. Now, there was another one that I wanted to bring up. Let's see if we can do this. I like this. I like being able to bring up this stuff. This is good. This is good stuff. I don't know which one it is. Hopefully this one is the right one. Let's see.
Are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals.
Saw his body, right?
Well, to 400 people all at once, going around teaching them for
40
days. That's
not the right one.
After he.
That's not the right one. Now that I know how to do this, y'all. Now I know how to do this. We're gonna be doing. We're gonna be breaking down some folk stuff. Is this the one then? Let's see.
Kind of the crazy thing about Christianity, where you have this Jewish itinerant guy who's walking around for centuries, and then they go from 11, because of this claim. I think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived. He objectively.
I hope that I didn't delete the one that I really wanted, the other one that I wanted. I think I might have deleted it, possibly. Let's see if this is
Say the book of Isaiah is intact. How similar is it to the book of Isaiah that's in the Bible?
That one is fascinating. So this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but when we discovered the Great Isaiah Scroll, previous to that, the earliest copy of Isaiah that we had was in the Masoretic text, which is in the Middle Ages.
Whoa.
We literally pushed back our understanding of Isaiah 1,000 years. And the thing that really shocked scholars was that it was word for word identical to the Masoretic text.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
Now, y'all heard that, right? He said that when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the Great Isaiah text was the Great Isaiah Scroll is exactly word for word of what you find in the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text is roughly around somewhere between 700 and 1000 BC, 1000 CE, right? Is the oldest version of the Masoretic text that we have. The Dead Sea Scrolls date back to somewhere between the 3rd century BCE up to the 1st century CE. Now, he said that it is 100% that they match. The problem with that is that there are over 2,600 textual variances between the Isaiah of the Masoretic text, the one that you have in your Bible, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, Great Isaiah Scroll. Now, most of the variances are spelling mistakes, but some of them are missing phrases. Some of them are whole missing chunks. So, but it is about 95% the same. But he just said that it's exactly the same, 100%. Let's hear it again.
Back our understanding of Isaiah 1,000 years. And the thing that really shocked scholars was that it was word for word identical to the Masoretic text.
Word for word, right? That what he said?
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
Double down on it.
It's so
Double
fascinating that 1,000 years later,
Yeah.
you have the exact translation of this at a
Got
time
no
where
Rogan.
most
Believe
people
in it.
were illiterate. Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But imagine how crazy that is. That something in a time where there's no printed press and something that had been passed on for so long as an oral tradition is exact word for word written found in a cave in Qumran.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Now, if that ain't, and you know what, this is gonna become a new term for me. If that ain't Billy Carson in this thing, how are you gonna sit up there and state that it's word for word? It's exactly the same. When you're supposed to be in college, you're supposed to be a PhD student, because he's not, I don't think he's finished yet. You're supposed to be a PhD student, and you're gonna say that it's word for word when there are 2,600 plus textual variances. Most of them not major, like I said. Most of them are spellings or different prepositions putting in or missing the preposition. But some of those variations are missing phrases and missing parts from the Masoretic text. And if we got missing and you got that many differences from the Masoretic text, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, who's to say how many differences you have in what was written in late 1st century and what then became the Sinaiticus, which then became the Valentinus, which then became, you know, your Bible that you have today. Then you got all the Tinsdales, the Genevas, the King James, and all these other, the Wycliffe Bibles, all these other variations. And then you got different people with your Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witness and all these other people who have created and written all their own different stories and made subtle changes. And even in the ones that you have today, just something as simple as the original, my first Bible when I was a kid, in Genesis 1 is told man and woman to go and refill the earth, and then, but now they all just say fill the earth. So many differences. And even the first part of Genesis shouldn't even read the way it reads today. Is it a big difference when it says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, compared to it should say in the beginning when God started, where it say in the beginning when God started creating the earth, when God started creating. Is that a big difference? It's not huge, but it is a difference, right? And it gives over to the idea when they was writing it that he was creating out of something that was already there. So it is somewhat of a big deal that reading it in this way that we read it today, it's in the beginning as if nothing was in existence, but then all of a sudden it's not. No, when he started creating out of the chaos, the darkness that was over the waters, and that makes the darkness over the water stuff make a little bit more sense when you think, oh, he was creating from something that was already there and just reforming it into what he is now creating. So it does make a difference. Just like John, was it John 1:1, where it says that it talks about how God was with us. It said that's the claim that people utilize to say that Jesus and God are one and the same. When if you actually read it, it says that that in the beginning, the God was towards a God, and that God was the Word, the Logos, and that God was towards the God. If you read it, if it's translated the way it should be, but because when it talks about the God, it uses ton theos. When it talks about the Word, the Logos, and then Jesus, it just uses the term theos. And in Koine Greek, without ton theos, it means a God. With ton theos, it is the God. So just those, even what we may think, oh, that's not a bigger change. That's just an interpolation or whatever. No, interpretation. No, it's wrong. It's wrong. That would clearly indicate, and this is probably why you have the Gnostics who did not believe that Jesus and the God were one and the same, because the original John 1 says the God, that the Word was a God, and that God was towards the God, So, and you can go, and you don't even have to be in some type of religious studies course. You can look that up online yourself. You can find the Koine Greek, and then you can have it translated, and you can see that it's what exactly I said is ton theos and theos, and when it speaks of the Word. So these changes, even though he claimed the Isaiah scroll is 100, it's not 100. I can plug my microphone back in. That's all the videos that I was going to play. I don't know if this changes the sound quality, but I like having my microphone in. So basically, what we can see from this is Wes Huff did a great job against Billy Carson. But in the growth of his fame, once he got sat down with Joe Rogan, he then went and made the same statements to the same criteria that Billy Carson did. He claimed that the Peter being crucified upside down as if it's a real thing, which comes from an apocryphal book, which is the same thing that Billy Carson was claiming. He claimed that Isaiah was exactly the same when we know that it is not. He claims the authorship of the New Testament, that these were eyewitnesses. They were not. He claimed that Luke interviewed eyewitnesses. Luke says no such thing. He claims that there were 400 when it's actually 500 people who supposedly witnessed this Jesus, that they witnessed it. They did not. The only person who says that they eyewitnessed the resurrected Jesus was Paul. Everybody else, it is something that is written decades upon decades later, if not almost a century later. So he is making the same type claims that when Billy said, oh, the Anunnaki came down and did this, and Jesus was never crucified, and Jesus was down in Egypt, and he got initiated into this group of people and that group of people and learned the mystics and all that kind of stuff. He's making the same type claims, even making the claim that I believe he said Cicero or somebody like that validates that Jesus went and lived in Egypt. There's an impossibility. Either you're going to say, if you say he went and he lived in Egypt, then you have to say that the Matthew birth story of Jesus then is false. And if the Matthew birth story of Jesus is false, then the rest of Matthew you got to look at with a side eye to it, because according to Matthew, wait a minute, no, I'm saying that wrong. Matthew is the one who claims that he went down to Egypt. If he's saying that Matthew is valid, that he went down to Egypt, then Luke's version is completely incorrect, right? Because in Luke's version, and if I'm getting this mixed up, y'all let me know. But in Luke's version, he's born, he gets circumcised, they go to the temple in Jerusalem, which, if you think about it, if he was going to the temple in Jerusalem, then, and it is the Luke version, if he's going to the temple in Jerusalem, and if Herod was still alive trying to kill the babies, they would not have went to Jerusalem. And then they went straight to Nazareth. And then 12 years later, he's back in Jerusalem and he preaches in the churches. So that nixes out the whole going to Egypt thing, because you don't go back to Jerusalem when you know that this man is trying to kill you. It doesn't happen that way. But Matthew says they got up, didn't go to Jerusalem, went straight down to Egypt. And then he's 30 years old. He comes back and he's 30 years old. Both of them cannot be right. So for him to say that this person's writings validate that he went and lived in Egypt is him doing the same thing, except he's just doing it with a canonized Bible, which the canonized Bible is just as much a forgery, just as much as some literature as any other writings that anybody else was writing at that time frame, right? So what do you guys think? Is Wes Huff, who is now the golden boy of Christianity and apologetics, which is so sad because there are much better apologists out there than him. Because I've seen other apologists who will say, they will make the statement, this is claimed, or this is according to the Bible, or according to this belief, according to belief. He's stating things as if they were facts when he got to the last half of this, the latter portion, last third of this interview, because I think it's like 2 or 3 hours long. But he's just as he loses his academic credibility for me at that point, And it's okay if you disagree. If you think he still maintained his academic credibility, that's fine. But as far as my thought process and thinking through this logically and listening to what he said, no, he does not. He does not maintain his credibility at all. Now that he got a little taste of this fame, he's doing exactly what Billy was doing. He's doing exactly what Billy was doing, which is, Billy was running a business, and people like the fantastical. Just like the reason why people like this Bible, because it's so fantastical. They're doing the same thing. As my dude Eric, thank you. It's a lot. Shameless promotion. Because if you know, you know. But yes, I think Wes has just become a grifter. I agree 100% with Boss Lady 76. He just became a grifter when he did that. He had an opportunity to not become that, but he went to the wayside. Like if I was sitting in the room there with Joe Rogan, I'm not going to say anything differently there than what I would say right now. With the 157,000 people that follow Facebook and the 24,000 that follow YouTube, I'm gonna say the same shit. It wouldn't matter. That both of those could be 1 million people following. I'm saying the same shit. The same thing that I say now is what I'm gonna say then. And if I find out additional information, to which we always find out new information, I will make adjustments. And I think this does play a little bit into it as well, Josie. He's the great white hype. And I will say it is primarily the, white Christians who are jumping all over his bandwagon. They loving it. He took down, as far as they're concerned, he took down the black man. And I hate that it could be a racial thing, but that's living in America. And having a lot of followers do come at a price. I gotta tell you, I agree with you. And if anybody who has ever met me, you will know that I blush a bit when I meet people, because it's still a weird thing to me to be out and about and somebody's like, "Hey, I know you," and I'd be like, "Oh, know me how?" It's still a weird thing, but it does come with a price, because now everything you say is going to be scrutinized. Um, that's why. Uh, that's one reason why I try to make it clear that I don't mind being corrected. And if I do find out some information that I've been given is incorrect, I will correct it, because everything is scrutinized. Yeah. But, I see Billy I've always seen him for exactly who he is. And when I first saw him, I thought, oh, this is cool. Somebody, because I was really getting into reading about the Anunnaki and the Sumerian texts and all that sort of thing at the time frame. And then it seemed like he was reputable, but then I was reading other stuff that was like, well, that don't make no sense. And then the matter of fact of how he was talking about, I'm like, dude, you talking about this stuff like is legit, and you talk about the Emerald Tablets like them things been around, for tens of thousands of years, when they are a composite of the Hermeticum, and the Corpus Hermeticum wasn't around to like the 4th century, the 15th century CE, and that was compiled by a whole bunch of other documentation. So, you gotta say that this is not something. You got to give it for its actual time frame. So, yeah, you got to be careful about that kind of stuff, and just say exactly it is what it is. Harvey, what's that link? Because I am very protective of my peoples. So I don't allow links up here unless I know what the link is, because I don't want to seem that I'm promoting someone's stuff. Stephanie, we're gonna have to get you on the clock, right? We gotta get you. Stephanie, I think you're in Texas somewhere, right? We're gonna have to come and set you an alarm clock. And this is something that's true. Now, I ain't gonna lie. I would love to be on the Joe Rogan show. One, I just want to meet Joe Rogan. I think he's a fascinating business person. Y'all know I love business. So if I was on there, I would roll up on that joke and be like, I would be distracting from the conversation. Like, so when you was building your business, but it has become that platform. It's the most, I think it has the most followers of almost any platform out there, any podcast out there. So he's grown it into something where it can make or break people. And it has. Now you in North Carolina, and I even said Eastern Standard Time, 8:00. Tell the Boondocks she on CP time. I don't know what Harvey put on there, but if you want to put a link on here, I need you to tell me what the link is first before you do it, because I will delete them. And see, I don't mind. Now, Netter said, I don't trust no one who is just about scamming people. If you have to, something knowledge is to help other people, is not just financial planning. But like, that's how I think about it. So like this relationship book that I'm finally finishing up, just waiting on the artwork for the cover. Um, it's a book I wrote based on relationships. After all the shit that I've been through, just based on relationship. After I finish this book, after I get this book done with the artwork, then the next thing I'm gonna write a book about deconstructing from Christianity. Sure, I want to sell the books. Don't get me wrong, and I don't have any problems with anybody selling a book or selling jewelry or selling anything. But just be legitimate about what you're selling. You know, if I wrote a book about the Emerald Tablets, I am going to give you all the history of where the Emerald Tablets come from, right? Welcome, Carla, for the first time. I'm gonna give you all the history of where it comes from. I'm gonna talk about Doriel and his possible scamming. I'm gonna talk about how the Kabbalion and the three initiates when and where it was developed, and then the Corpus Hermeticum. And I'm gonna talk about um, Cosimo Medici, who got his guy Florentini, to go and produce it. I'm sorry, y'all, my eyes are burning a little bit. But I'm going to tell you about all the history first, so that before you get into it, you'll already know where the information is coming from. And then if something is theorized, like the Corpus Hermeticum is theorized to have come from the writings in ancient Kemet and ancient Samaria, then I'm going to tell you this information is theorized to come from these people. We have no documented proof that it came from them. Focini, and I'm saying his name wrong, he claimed that's where it came from ancient Greek writers, and those ancient Greek writers got it from the Cometics and got it from the Sumerians, and he compiled it for Cosimo Medici. You put that in your book so that it's there. No, I was so. So your wife's still cooking. That's why your eyes are burning. No, they're burning because while I was up here producing, I was making videos earlier today for both my channels, and because it's cold outside, we've made this with the air purifiers and fans so we can have as an in-house cigar lounge. And I had about 3 of them in this room, and I turned the fan off so that y'all wouldn't hear all that noise. So that's why my eyes burn. We talking about my wife cooking, Sean. Don't make me have to come fight you. Yeah, and see, the thing about Billy is, I think early on, Billy started out legitimately researching information. And then I think the money went to his head. I think the money and the prestige went to his head. And, like a lot of people, they got to become more and more outlandish. One of the reasons why I like people like John Hancock is because he will say theories and possibly and things of that nature and not be emphatic about things unless he knows for sure. I was ready to go to the Bimini Road when we was in Bimini in May, but we couldn't get to it. But I wasn't going to it thinking like this is exactly what it is, because we still don't know what it is. How much would it take for you to debate Wes Huff? Would pay a lot to see it. It doesn't. I don't charge for debates. Now, if somebody wanted me to come somewhere and debate somebody, you're gonna pay my fare. But I don't charge. I wouldn't charge to debate him. It'd just be like, okay, come on, no big deal. So where do you think all religions and symbols come from? I think all the religions come from the fact of man just looking at nature and devising up an idea of some deity because they lack the scientific understanding of what it is. And then as far as symbols, I think people just created symbols that fit them, like kind of like how I wear my little hand of Hansama. The evil eye, though, has been around for a long time because of people ideas of other people have given evil intentions. And it's kind of like what they said earlier. People have always believed in a spiritual level of things. So they said, oh, people give me their evil intentions, so they make a protective eye, and the eye sees. So they's like, oh, since the eye sees, then we have to have an internal eye that sees deeper and beyond. And so you make your all-seeing eyes and things of that nature, because that's how we see things. So then you put that on your God, but make it even bigger. So man just creates shit based on whatever level of understanding that he has. But religion started because man couldn't understand nature. I would be smoking a cigar right now, but I haven't eaten dinner, and that is not a good combination. I don't think that he would, but I don't think that he would debate me because I don't make outlandish claims, and I drill down into the actual information and then think through it logically. So um, it, it wouldn't go. I don't think a debate with Wes Huff with me would, and he would go that far. But I think he would. I think it would just bow itself out to this is just what you believe, and you really don't have any facts. You can't really prove that that's true. That's the belief, and that's where it would end, because you can't prove. The only things you can prove in the Bible: did Jerusalem exist? Yes, it existed. Uh, did the Israelite people exist from around 12 something BCE? Yeah, they existed. Were they conquered by these people? Yeah, they were conquered. Did an angel come down and kill 185,000 of the Assyrians when they were laying siege to Jerusalem? Hell no, you can't prove that. If anything, you got proof from Sennacherib that you got Sennacherib saying that no, he pulled him back after Hezekiah paid his tribute. So that's how it would go. You can have your belief, but your belief don't prove it. Your belief is not facts. So, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I try to make sure that my research is as close as I can. That's why there's like post notes all over the front of this, because I try not to go 100% off memory, but I write bullets for myself because I'm not going to remember everything. Yeah, the Bible, some people, although the Bible will have some lessons and things in there that that's good shit, some here and there, it's not enough to say that I need to follow this book and read it. I can find the Tao has 81 sayings in it, and all 81 sayings in the Tao are better than the totality of the morality in the Bible. So it rhymes a little bit, but they're better than the whole thing. So why would I waste my time trying to read a whole bunch of stories when I can just read the 81 saying? I think it's 81 sayings in the Tao, and get way more wisdom from just reading that than the Bible. The Bible is good for controlling people. And if you want to scare the shit out of some people, it's good for that. And yes, thank you. They had no alphabet, so they made characters and symbols to express their ideas about nature, and that we are simply a part of one unknown divine, and saying we are on the planet. And I was saying, where on the planet did it come from? Oh, you're saying where did it? No, I agree that yeah, symbol writing was one of the first styles of writing. Is the first style of writing that we know of, I should say. But where on the planet did it come from? All over the planet, actually. If you think about it, the Aztecs and Mayans had absolutely no contact with the people in the Levant, yet they all did like pictograph style writing. They had no contact with the Egyptians or the Sumerians and did the same thing. The ancient Chinese and the groups that were before the Chinese did the same thing, and the same thing happening with the Pacific Islanders. I think it's just a natural progression of man to do so. all over the world. Just like you can find where people did the same thing but didn't have any contact with each other. They all had storm deities and lightning deities and things of that nature because that's what they saw. And so they created the same ideas. Um, you even have some inventions that two people claim to have invented something at roughly the same time frame but never had contact with each other. Now, I'm going to check. I haven't checked because what I didn't want to do is, and which I don't think there's any problem with it. I didn't want to go and listen to some of the people that I subscribe to and then kind of come on here and make my statements. But I'm going to go check. I would wager that the majority of the people of this same type genre that I subscribe to probably have made videos fact checking the hell out of old boy, out of Wes. Uh, I'm pretty sure that they have. And I'm pretty sure that some of them probably make some of the same statements that I've made tonight, but I didn't want to be influenced by theirs. So I didn't go and listen to anybody. But I guarantee that people like the Gnostic Informant probably has a video. Apologia probably has a video. Religion for Breakfast, he don't normally do those kinds of things. So I don't expect Religion for Breakfast to have done that. But it'd be interesting to see if he did. But I'm pretty sure that he's been fact checked a lot. But yes, you can look at the fact that there are pyramids all over the world, no contact, but similar idea, basic form used all over. And it is a basic form. If you're going to build and construct something out of earth and material, a pyramid is the most solid form that you can create. Right? So it makes sense that everybody around the world built some formation, some type of facsimile of a pyramid, whether it's earthen mounds or straight up pyramids. Now and you mean the Catholic Church stole from the Sibyls, I think is how you say that. But yes, there's so much work that's been plagiarized through this religion that is obscene. Now, Carla, thank you for being the first time following us, watching, Carla. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing to the channel who are new and subscribing to the channel. Dr. Kip Davis. I don't know who that is, but who is that? And if you want to support the channel, there's a way to support the channel as well. And of course, I tagged in the description of every video from now on since yesterday, where you can get the merch is there. Shameless plugs. Josie said, do you believe that the whale in the Jonah story was really a submarine advanced tech of ETs and that they are flying chariots or spaceships in the Bible? Okay, so this is just a theory. I am not saying that there is any proof of this whatsoever. But through my logical thinking, the way I see it, let me keep your statement up there. Our recorded history goes back about 12,000 years that we know of. With Tehran Tepe and Göbekli Tepe, and we don't know if there's anything more. But prior to 12,000 years ago, there was the Younger Dryas flood and the Younger Dryas freeze, and then there was an ice age that freeze was part of, and that freeze lasted from about 50,000 BCE to roughly around 12,000 BCE. Now, we have evidence that human presence has been on the planet longer than the last ice age, whether through fossilized footprints or other monolithic structures. The Earth has been through a series of extinction level events, whether it's polar shifts and ice ages and things of that nature. I think that it is quite possible that there were advanced civilization to the degree that we are at now, or even beyond, that could have existed 60,000 years ago, and the last ice age destroyed their civilization, finalizing by the Younger Dryas flood, and that those people, a remnant of them, could have survived. And maybe some of these stories of gods flying in the sky and things of that nature could have come from that. And even the idea of some of these Sumerian gods and, Quetzalcoatl and all those could have come from that civilization. But also, those same theories, those same beliefs could have come from them seeing a shooting star and thinking that that was a chariot of the gods. And if you think about when you see if you ever get to see the Pleiades, I think that happens around November. If you're in the right spot, it could be seen like a whole bunch of them are just shooting down. You see, like in 1 minute, you might see 3, 4 of them. And you can say, oh, those are the fallen angels. So it could just be from witnessing astronomical events. Now, when you get into this whole Jonah story, I think it's just a completely made up story. I think it's just a completely made up story. If there were advanced civilization, the main problem I have with the idea of advanced civilizations prior and some of them still surviving to today is, why would they have allowed for man to develop to a point where we can fight against them? I would have kept man subdued, if I'm ruling over them. So I like the idea of pre-intellectual civilizations, and the Ice Age kind of kicked their butt, but I rather err on the side that if they were in existence, their entire society was destroyed. And then our current human history developed from a restart. And I wouldn't be surprised if we, in the next, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5,000 years, human civilization has another restart. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I do think that there was, just only reason I think there was prior civilization is because of the evidence of some levels of civilization being here prior to the last ice age. So somebody was here. Don't know what level of technology they were at, but somebody. But I don't think they came from another planet. I don't think about that. The idea of Nibiru throws me off, because logically, if beings can live on Earth and they have that capability, the planet Nibiru is supposed to go way out past Pluto. Unless they are at minimum a level 1 technological society where they are able to sustain their atmosphere and the warmth of their planet by harnessing geothermic energy, they're not living. There's nothing that's going to live on that planet. Way out there, hell, as soon as you go past the habitable zone, nothing's living on that planet. So I'm a little, Now, what did Stephanie said? Portals and vortexes. I think there's the possibility. Science suggests that there's the possibility, but I'm more of I need to see it. I need to see it. Until we have some evidence of it. And maybe one day in our society, our science will grow to the point where we're able to create vortexes and portals ourselves. And that would be great. Because I would like to be able, like, hey, you want to go to France and just leave? And you want to go to Benin and just go? Now, this I do agree with. I don't think that we're the only beings in the entire universe, and there has to be others in different realms and dimensions. I don't know about realms and dimensions, possibly, could be, because of I do subscribe to the Hermetic principles. So there could be in other realms and dimensions. But I do think just even on our matter plane of existence, that there are other beings out there. You cannot, mathematically, it doesn't make, it goes against math. And math is a true language, it's the truest language. It would be virtually impossible for all the galaxies out in our known universe with all their solar systems and all the stars, that this is the only planet that has our type of life on it. And then there could be other types of life that we don't comprehend or can't get down with. You know, we couldn't live on their planet, they couldn't live on our planet, but there's some life that lives on that planet. But this entire universe that we know of, we're the only life. That's a sorry ass creator, God, if out of all the universe, this is the only place that you created life. And then you chose this one little space. It's funny. It's funny you say that, Stephanie, because I was looking at the ceiling, and this house happened to have a popcorn ceiling upstairs. And I'm looking, and my wife was like, "What are you looking at? What are you thinking about?" And I was like, "If you look at all the little popcorns on the ceiling, that would be like looking at the universe, and every one of those little popcorns representing a galaxy. And within those galaxies, there are billions upon billions of stars. And within those billions of stars, there are billions of solar systems that have Earth-like planets in the habitable zone. That's like millions upon millions, if not billions, of life in the universe. So just looking at the ceiling, I was thinking about that. Like, you can't tell me that there's no one else out there. I actually like the Dogon tribe because they were able to see Sirius B and actually know that it was a triune star system and the movement of it without none of the instrumentation that we have. So they somehow they knew. I wish we really knew how they knew. That's the thing. How did they know? And I don't want to just say that previous civilization, but people traveling from there, if they did, how they get here? And why am I still here? If they did come from there, why am I still here? Haven't they seen enough of my videos to say we need to remove him from Earth because he needs to come with us? I need him to come with us. And maybe they got a wormhole, and that's how they're able to travel here, or they're able to fold space, whatever they do, however they did it. If they came from Sirius B, I need them to come pick me up. I need them to come get me. And maybe there are ley line portal places like where a bunch of strong ley lines meet together, and maybe that's where the portal is at. I know the Great Pyramid sits on one of the big cross sections of ley lines, but I need them to come pick me up. I ain't supposed to be here with y'all. I mean, all evidence would suggest that the Dogon tribe were from where they were from, Mali. But they claimed that they were visited by these, were they reptilians or they were like fish-like people, the Nomos, that they were visited by them and they came and taught them civilization and that they claimed that they came from Sirius B. Now, they could have just been from Earth and then just told them, yeah, we're from Sirius B, just to make them seem grander, Because that sounds like the kind of stuff that a conquering people would do, or somebody who's trying to amaze you like this. We came from that star because we can tell you that and you can't prove it because you don't have the technology. But that's where we came from. You see how it moves? Yeah, let me show you how it moves. It'll be a great mind fuck. And I mean to say it that way. You think about it, if you're trying to create a religion with a people and you want them to worship you and you already got greater technology that makes you look like a god, now you need to give them a bigger fantastical story that they won't be able to disprove so that you will always be validated to those people. It's the same way that people do like that's the same way that they got people in America thinking America is the greatest country in the world, but you can go to other countries and live way better than you do in America. You can go to other countries and have more freedom than you do in America, but they convince you that America has the most freedom, and yet it does not. But they can convince you of that, and you'll believe that and accept it without. And if you never go anywhere else, of course you're going to believe it. So if I'm some sea people, I'm telling, I got greater technology and I survived the cataclysm. Yeah, I roll up on them, be like, look, yes, I came from there. I'm fantastical. People, it's not hard to fool people. As we've seen with Billy Carson and Wes Huff, fooling people is not that difficult to do. If you can create a story that's good enough and that they can't prove it, you're good. Now, once they can prove it, you kind of messed up. You're done. That's why these religions are shrinking. All these religions are shrinking because, when they wrote this stuff, they was thinking, like the Romans were thinking that their society was going to live forever. All these societies always think that their society is going to live forever. And so they think that they'll maintain this control forever. So when these religions were written, they were thinking, oh, we're always going to be able to maintain this control because, people are going to believe it and they're going to keep believing it. They didn't, if they knew, and this is what makes this God so fallible. This guy talked about how he made it rain, or he caused the drought, or he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah through fire and brimstone from the heavens and all these things. Did he not realize that at some point we will figure things out, that we will figure out how weather patterns work, that we'd be able to predict droughts and predict rainfall, that we will be able to, at some point, we'll be able to, like even now, we're close to being able to predict earthquakes and tsunamis. At some point, we were going to figure this out. So why would all of a sudden, why would this, if you was this God, say that, yeah, and I made an earthquake happen? We know how earthquakes happen. So what the hell? If you were a God, you're going to know that we're going to come up with this stuff. Oh, you was in Korea? I never went to Korea. It's on the list though. But my uncle loved Korea. He thought Korea was the best place. Didn't want to leave Korea. Show hell, as a black man, he didn't want to come back to America. Hell no. Most Christians and Muslims do not read their book. They read, and even for the ones who, because it is a bigger push in Islam to read the entire thing, but it is to read it under the idea that whatever your imam has told you is what it is. Okay, y'all going too fast now. If there is a locked vortex, we need to find it and unlock it so I can get off. So I can get off this rock. I need to go. But it is nearing that time, and I have not. And my wife has finished dinner, and she finished it a while ago. I'm pretty sure she finished cooking. So we are going to call this one a day because, like I said, now on, we're live today. We'll be live again tomorrow. Where's she at? Stephanie. We will be live again tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Standard Time. Marcus, I believe we became the dominant species because of our ability to critically think and invent shit, to go beyond just simple tool making. But we will be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if Stephanie is late, I'm going to talk so much trash. If Dwayne Howard is late, I'm talking trash. I'm calling y'all out now. But so the schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be here. I have no idea what the subject matter is going to be tomorrow. I usually don't know until in the morning. And then I go and get into my research bag. So 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank everybody who's supporting the channel, whether through getting merchandise, you can find it in the description of the videos, or supporting the channel directly here. I appreciate it. Y'all have a great night. Subscribe, share, all that great stuff. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations. Where's the button at?